We begin today's class from the Sutra number 2, where we read about vrittis. We were discussing about what vrittis are. When you said chitta vritti nirodha, chitta can manifest itself as different vrittis. But chitta, as I told you, is the mind stuff, and the lower condition of the chitta is manas, and at a higher level, chitta itself manifests itself as buddhi. So, buddhi is part of the Vijnanamaya Kosha, where you will find that the discriminative part of the mind is revealed. You can see things clearly, you can understand things clearly, whereas manas is reactive. So, Swamiji says, until the mind stuff or chitta can take the form of the intellect or buddhi, it is not possible for us to return through all these steps and liberate the soul. All these steps means how vrittis are formed. Swamiji had explained, we had discussed in the previous class that how different vrittis are formed. Vrittis are formed when the object which is outside is seen or perceived through our sense organs. It is sent to the manas, and then the manas or the lower mind reacts. The reactive mind reacts in a particular way, and that is how vrittis are formed in the chitta, the mind stuff. So the mind stuff is also full of samskaras, and how the different vrittis are formed depends on your old frozen vrittis which have assumed the form of samskaras, which have been thought long ago. Across several births, these vrittis have, as it were, solidified as samskaras. And your vrittis, your reaction, your vritti is a reaction to the objects perceived outside of you or even inside in dream, as in dream. But whenever there is a stimulation and the manas reacts in a particular way, a vritti is formed, that we discussed in our previous class. Now, this vritti can take the form of a reaction, in which case you are one with the manas. The chitta is one with the manas. The mind stuff is predominantly reacting through the manas. But if it reacts through the buddhi, which is higher in scope as well as discriminative in nature, which can take correct decisions, then it is possible to combine or to align oneself to the Purusha and liberate the soul. Right now, the soul is trying to gravitate towards the Annamaya and Pranamaya Kosha, because the Manomaya Kosha is focused towards the lower two levels of our existence. But we have to reverse the process, and all the objects, the whole world outside us, is trying to draw us outside. Yoga attempts to do the reverse, to follow the reverse process and take the uh, chitta, the mind stuff, should take the form, the samskaras, the perceptions that we get, they should form vrittis, but they should form the vrittis of buddhi. So a higher vritti is formed when the higher portion of the mind becomes active, not the reactive mind or manas. Manas, buddhi, ahankara, and chitta, as I told you. But chitta is the main receptacle, and it is also known as the mind stuff. Swamiji has translated it as mind stuff. So the chitta, as long as your chitta doesn't take the form of an intellect, form of buddhi, which can which has the capacity to understand the higher and higher levels of spirituality, it can then align itself with the Anandamaya Kosha, and then that buddhi, the light of buddhi, when it becomes more intense, we come to pure consciousness, which is Purusha. So we discussed last time, we ended our discussion by saying the chitta manifests itself in the following forms, in some forms which are three in number. Kshipta, that is scattering. or there are four forms. The four forms which a chitta can undertake, or I mean they manifest. Chitta manifests in different form. If it is kshipta, that is a technical word. That means the vrittis are scattered. They are not focused. They are not one pointed. They are always restless, and you have so many vrittis coming up in the mind because of uh, the scattered nature of the mind. So that is known as kshipta chitta. Muda is darkening. Muda means it is a dull mind which doesn't want to think. At least the kshipta is restless and can see so many things, and though no doubt it is restless, but it is active. Whereas the Muda is darkening. It, it it is a dull kind of mind which is incapable of thinking. Vikshipta, that is gathering. Vikshipta is just opposite of Kshipta. Kshipta means to scatter. Vikshipta means to gather towards. That is concentrated or one pointed, not concentrated, it is one pointed. So it then ekagra, then we have or gathering. Vikshipta is gathering, ekagra is one pointed, and niruddha is concentrated. So we have these different states of chitta which give rise to different vrittis. I'll repeat what these vrittis are. First is the what different form this chitta takes. First is the scattering or kshipta form. Then we have the darkening or mudha form, gathering or focusing, which is the vikshipta form, ekagra, which is one pointed, concentrated, and one pointed, and niruddha, which is concentrated. Now you may ask, what is the difference between ekagra and concentrated? So niruddha, yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. Chitta vritti, when it is niruddha, the sense of ego doesn't remain. In ekagra, the ego is still that I am focusing on one particular point. The I is very strong. Whereas in niruddha or a concentrated mind, the feeling of I almost seems to vanish, though it vanishes only in samadhi. But niruddha, when you totally stop, when you come to that concentrated state of mind, the ego, as it were, vanishes for some time, and you get a feeling that you are one with the Purusha. The Kshiptak scattering form is activity. Its tendency is to manifest in the form of pleasure or pain. When the Kshipta, that is the scattered form of mind, it will, if there are wonderful things happening around us, then there will be pleasure. If there are painful happenings around us and they keep on continuing in a procession and scattering, then there is lot of pain. So kshipta is a kind of activity of the mind, of the chitta, but its tendency is to manifest in the form of pleasure or pain, sukha or dukkha. Mudha, darkening form, is dullness, which tends to injury. Dullness here doesn't merely mean that one will become quiet. A person who is dull can be destructive. He is not creative, he is not positive. He wants to destroy everything because he is not only restless, but he is incapable of rajasic activity. So he wants to destroy. He doesn't like anything good happening around him. So it is known as mudha. So it is like foolish. So foolish people only try to destroy, whereas the kshipta form of the mind will lead to some kind of creative activity, that which is good. Though it is restless, but it is a positive kind of restlessness. Whereas Muda is a destructive kind of restlessness, which is not exactly Rajas, there is more of Tamas in that. The commentator says the third form is natural to the Devas and angels, and the first and second to the demons. So, demons means here we mean Asuras and Devas. They, actually, human beings are classified as Asuras and Devas. Asuras are those people who are predominantly Mudha or Kshipta. Their chittas are darkening, either they injure or they are intensely active, they are restless. And when their restlessness takes the form of Mudha, they tend to commit injury. So the third form is natural to the Devas, commentator says. Third form is the Vikshipta. But the Kshipta, first and second, Kshipta and the Mudha, Kshipta and the Mudha form are very common to the Asuras or demons. Demons, in the sense, demon is not some, they are human beings whose nature is destructive or darkening or Mudha. When they have Mudha and Kshipta, the animal nature in man comes out and he tends to injure all around him, or he is dull, he is inert, he is incapable of any good activity. So the Kshipta and Mudha are very common to the Asuras, and to the Devas, the Vikshipta, the gathering form, they are more in control of their own senses, control of their organs, control of their mind. Or they are Vikshipta or they are Ekagra, one pointed form, when it tries to concentrate. When the mind tries to concentrate, it becomes, we call it Ekagra. After Pratyahara, when we do Dharana, Vikshipta is a state where we do Pratyahara, where we tend to gather our mind from going outside and try to point it towards one object. The Ekagra mind is when you have tried and tried to concentrate. When a person tries to concentrate, he becomes Ekagra. And when the Niruddha form comes, it is a totally concentrated form. And that is what brings us to Samadhi. So that's what Swamiji says. So these are the 5 different states of Chitta which are explained. Before explaining what the vrittis are, Swamiji is trying to explain us the different forms that a human mind tries to take when he is trying to control the mind. When he tries to control the mind, he lives on these 3 states, the Vikshipta, Ekagra or Niruddha, the concentrated form. And finally, Yoga, Chitta, Vritti, Nirodha. So from that Nirodha, Niruddha state has come. So Chitta Vrittis, when they are first converted from Kshipta or Mudha and converted into Vikshipta, Ekagra or then finally Niruddha, the last 3 states, they are common to yogis, or that is why they are known as devas, those who are divine, those who are practicing. Now, what happens as a result of this exercise? When we try to make the chitta one with buddhi as a result of our capacity or the efforts to make the mind vikshipta, ekagra and finally niruddha, when we control our senses and our mind, what happens? What is the result? Tada, at that time, at the time of concentration, drashtuhu swarupe avasthanam. Drashtuhu means the person who is seer, the Purusha. What happens to the Purusha within us? The Purusha rests in his own unmodified state. So tada, in that state of mind, when you are totally niruddha, when the mind is totally concentrated, or the mind becomes one in samadhi, at that time the Purusha sees only itself. He rests in his own unmodified state. So the state of vrittis is a modified state. It is a state in Prakriti where there is restlessness, there is mudha, there are the different states which we discussed just now. So that restlessness, when it goes, what happens is the Purusha rests in his own tada drashtuhu swarupe avasthanam. As soon as Swamiji explains it by saying that as soon as the waves of our mind vrittis have stopped, the lake has become quiet, we see the bottom. That means we see our own self, which is of the nature of Sat Chetananda in Vedanta and Purusha in Sankhya. Purusha is pure consciousness. So with the mind, when it is calm, we see what our own nature is. So also we have to calm down our mind to find out how it functions, how the vrittis are forming, how the vrittis make us mudha, how the vrittis make us restless, how the vrittis make us dull, how the vrittis make us vikshipta. So to reverse the process is to make it first kshipta, that is focused, then we make it ekagra, and then finally niruddha. So the last 3 states when the chitta assumes, as a result of control of mind, control of the senses and the control of the manas, the reactive mind, when the reactive mind becomes quiet, that means the waves have stopped in the chitta, the lake becomes quiet, then we see the bottom. And our mind, when it is calm, we see what our real nature is. Then we know, then we get a semblance of our glorious nature, which is Satchidananda. We do not mix ourselves but remain our own selves. We do not mix ourselves with Prakriti. At that moment, we remain alone, in the sense we remain our own selves. Trada drishtu swarupe avasthanam. Swarupe means in our own rupa. When we are in that niruddha state, yoga, state of yoga, yoga chitta vritti nirodha, we don't mix or identify ourselves with the restlessness which is very common in Prakriti and remain our own selves. That is the true meaning of solitude or aloneness, not loneliness, aloneness. So the next vritti explains, but that state is very rare. Very rarely in our daily life or in our whole life, we can remain our own selves. Most of the time, we are not our own self. We are identifying ourselves with hundreds of things which is not our own self or Purusha, which is not our Satchidananda. We are that pure divinity which is within. But unfortunately, when we mix ourselves, when that reflected divinity becomes prominent, when our buddhi becomes colored or buddhi becomes diluted, we go to the reactive mind and then see an entirely different world full of pleasure and pain, sorrow and depression and so many things, depending on what state the chitta takes. The chitta, if it takes the state of vikshipta or the mudha, then we see this world as a miserable world, full of sorrow, full of dullness, full of inertness, or full of destructive thoughts. That is when people try to commit suicide because they don't understand. They think the world is a very painful place to live in. But there are other three states which take us towards our real self, which help us to remain our own self. And for that, a little bit of solitude and little bit of introspection is required. So those three states, the vikshipta, not the kshipta, restless, the vikshipta, the indrawn, or the vikshipta, the ekagra, and the niruddha. These are three more states which lift us up from depression, from sorrow, and make us try to identify ourselves with the buddhi, which will show us what we really are. It allows us or takes us towards the journey where we can remain our own selves. Tada drishtuhu, after attaining to that state of concentration, we remain our own selves. And we are not sad. We remain as, we identify ourselves with the Purusha or the Satchidananda on which we meditate as our Ishta. The Ishta is nothing but a representation of the Satchidananda Brahman or Purusha, which we are trying to attain, which is, we are part of that or we are that. But unfortunately, when we mix ourselves, the fourth verse says, Vritti sarupyam itaratra. At all other times, other than that of concentration or samadhi, the one who is seeing is identified with the modifications. The calm, peaceful, joyful Satchidananda imagines that he is full of pain, he is full of sorrow, because he has a tendency to identify himself with the vrittis, which are lower in nature, which are part of Prakriti. The more he identifies with Prakriti, vritti sarupyam itaratra. Itaratra means in all other times, when we are not in concentration, when we do not meditate, when we do not focus on one thing to the exclusion of others, when we don't focus, at that time we find this world a strange mixture of pleasure and pain, depending on which vrittis are predominant even in our mind. If we have asuric tendencies, then our minds will be restless, kshipta or mudha. But if we are of the nature of devas or divine or moving towards divinity, then there will be less of vikshipta vrittis or vikshipta chitta or the muda chittas. The chitta will take the form successively of vikshipta, ekagra, and then finally niruddha. When it takes the form of niruddha, then you clearly see the waves of the lake become calm. The surface of the lake becomes calm, and you can see the bottom. You can see your real self. You can identify yourself with the real self. The seer, but other than that, which is where we all live now, most of us, unless we focus on our own self, we will be always identifying ourselves with the vritti. If we are identifying ourselves with the vrittis of anger, then we become angry. We say we are full of anger, we are full of pleasure, or we are full of some other emotion, other vritti, whichever vritti dominates in our chitta, whichever vritti we identify with that. If happy vrittis are there, we call ourselves, oh, today I am feeling happy. On some other day, the vrittis are mudha, totally destructive. We just don't feel comfortable. The vrittis tell us, no, you are unhappy. Actually, we are not unhappy or happy. Our nature is pure Satchidananda. But unfortunately, mixing ourselves with the modifications or identifying ourselves with the modification, the seer thinks that he is sorrowful, either he is asuric or he is daivik, either he is devilish or he is divine. Even if he thinks that he is divine, still he is part of Prakriti. But of course, he has raised himself. If he has become identified himself with the Vikshipta or the Ekagra or the Niruddha Vrittis, then he is slowly coming to a state when he finally attains the Niruddha state where there are no modifications, then he he remains in his own self or as Purusha, totally happy, totally blissful, and with total uh, lack of unsecurity. He becomes totally secure because he is Sat, always eternally existence. He doesn't fear death. He becomes totally eternal, immortal because he is identifying himself with Sat, Chit, the pure consciousness, and the bliss which results in identifying ourselves with that. So, Satchidananda or Purusha or the Brahman is what we have to attain through this yoga. Otherwise, all the other states of mind, chitta, when we are not in yoga, the chitta takes the vritti sarupyam itaratra. Our self takes the form of the vrittis. For instance, Swamiji says, somebody blames me. This produces a modification vritti in my mind, and I identify myself with it, and the result is misery. So that's why they say, when somebody blames me, you should prevent the modification from forming. We should be the witness. We should be the Purusha. We should be the Satchidananda. We should immediately identify with that. That is what means when we just are aware. We see the whole play going outside us, as Swamiji says, this is like a circus where everybody is tumbling. So it produces a vritti, and if I identify myself with the vritti, then the result is misery, because if somebody blames me and I take it seriously and I think he is blaming me, but if I stand aside as if you are watching a movie or as if you are watching a show where two people are quarreling, you are not bothered because you are just a witness. So that witness attitude, that attitude of awareness, pure awareness, has to be created through meditation, through japa, through spiritual practice, where we more and more we try to identify ourselves with the Purusha and not with the Vrittis. The choice is ours. We can identify ourselves with the Vrittis, or we can, if we identify ourselves with the Vrittis, as the fourth sutra says, Vritti Sarupyam Itaratra. Most of the time, when we are not meditating or not in the state of yoga, if we don't practice yoga, if we just allow things to happen, the reactive mind to function, most of the time our reactive mind is functioning, not the chitta, not the buddhi. If the buddhi is functioning, then you will see you identify yourself with something higher within yourself, the modifications decrease, and you identify yourself with the pure Atman or pure Purusha. Now, in verse number 5 or the sutra number 5, a detailed description of the vrittis are given. What are these vrittis? We classified the chitta into 5. We just classified the chitta into 5 different states. But the chitta comprises of vrittis. They also can be classified into 5 classes. So the fifth sutra says, vritti vrittayaha. Vritti is a singular, vrittayaha is plural of vritti. So vrittayaha, panchatayaha, they are of 5 kinds. Pancha means 5. There are 5 kinds of vrittis. Vrittayaha, panchataya, klishta, aklishta. Both they are 5, but all these 5 vrittis have two, they can be classified into 2 types, klishta and aklishta also. But they are of 5 types, 5 classes of modifications. Some of them are painful and others not painful. Some of the vrittis are klishta, some are aklishta. That is verse number or sutra number 5. So vrittis can be classified. What that classification is, we will try to understand. Why is it necessary to understand this idea of vrittis? Because unless we know what are the different types of thoughts, unless we classify them, whenever you make a study of any subject, physics, chemistry, mathematics, you try to classify different things. Suppose you study biology or botany or zoology, you classify them as plants, animals, and within animals there are species, there are genus, and there are different ways of classification. It facilitates easy understanding. We can't say, because we have thousands of vrittis, thoughts coming every day. Is there any basic classification? Can we classify all our thoughts into a few? Can we classify all the particular thoughts which come every minute, every second we get thoughts? But are there specific types of thoughts? The Yoga Sutras say yes. Vrittis are only of 5 types, 5 classes. That is the genius of Patanjali. Patanjali doesn't wants to make things very simple. If you tell somebody that he should control his thoughts, they'll be confused because there are thousands of thoughts. How to control each one? There are the thoughts of anger, there are the thoughts of jealousy, envy, stupidity, the ignorance, so many different types of thoughts. It can be classified into so many different thoughts. Thoughts can be classified into thousands of categories, but that will be confusing. If you reduce it to a few categories or modifications, 5 classes, then it will be very easy for you to understand how it influences you and how it can be controlled. Because some of the vrittis are painful and others are aklishta. Klishta means klesha means pain. Some are painful vrittis and some are not so painful. So we have to see which vrittis we should allow, if at all we should allow. The best thing is not to allow the vrittis to come, because when the vrittis come, depending on our samskaras, they can be painful. Most of the time they are painful. Sometimes they may not be painful, they may give us pleasure. But still, unless we control them, we do not know what to do with the painful vrittis come, we simply suffer. If the not so painful come, we enjoy. So if it is totally enjoyment all the time, pleasure all the time, then it would be nice, but it is not so, because the modifications by their very nature, some of them are classified as painful vrittis, some are known as painless, not so painful vrittis. Klishta, aklishta. So what are these vrittis? So it has been classified very clearly in Raj Yoga. Patanjali makes it very easy for us to understand what are the 5 classes of vrittis. And if we know or if we try to understand these, then it becomes easy for us to control them. Unless you know, suppose you have a dog, you do not understand his nature, you don't know how he behaves in different circumstances, then it is difficult for you to control that dog. To control that dog, you should know the nature. What makes him restless, what makes him happy, what makes him sit quietly. So, accordingly, the trainer who trains the dog knows. Similarly, our vrittis, we have to know the nature of our vrittis. Which are the 5 classes or modifications which our vrittis can take? Patanjali has reduced all the vrittis which we can possibly think. All the vrittis. We may have thousands of vrittis, but still they will form part of at least one of these 5 categories. They will fall in one of these 5 categories, classes. One of these 5 classes of modification, which are, the names are given now in the 6th sutra. He says pramana viparyaya vikalpa nidra smritaya. These are pramana vrittaya. What are these vrittis? Pramana first, viparyaya number 2, vikalpa number 3, nidra. Nidra means sleep. Sleep is also a vritti. People think sleep is not a vritti. The sleep vritti or the deep sleep vritti which we experience when we are sleeping, most of the time we are not sleeping, we are dreaming. So the dreaming vrittis come under these three, pramana, viparyaya, vikalpa. But nidra is a deep sleep vritti which happens part, I mean in some time during our sleep. Most of the time we are dreaming or we are restless, but there are some stages during our sleep when we go into this nidra vritti. Nidra is the deep sleep. And smrutaya. Smrutaya means memory. These memories are when you either dream or daydream. You can dream in sleep, you can even daydream. How do you daydream? You think of something, you think of some old thing which is known as smriti. Smriti means memory. So these memories, when you recall these memories, you are actually, the vritti is known as smriti, all memories. So also dream. Dream is, in dream you are nothing but connecting old memories and you are dreaming so many things, different possibilities, which may or may not be real, but they are based on reality, some past experience thing. You may not have experienced it. That is why dreams are very difficult to decipher. But smriti is something very important. So let us see what these 5 vrittis are. I'll list them again. Pramana, viparyaya, vikalpa, nidra, and smriti. All the thoughts that come to us, all the vrittis which come to us, fall into these 5 categories. Either you are having a pramana vritti, or you are having a viparyaya vritti, or you can classify your vritti as a vikalpa vritti, or you are either in deep sleep, you are having nidra vritti, deep sleep, or you are imagining things, daydreaming or dreaming, smritaya, or just reminiscing. You are just trying to recall into memory the things of the past. Whatever you remember, you try to recall. And based on that, your smriti, you develop certain vrittis which are smriti. They are not actual happenings. They are not based on present experiences. This smritaya, memory, is based on past experiences which have passed away, and that allows us, or that motivates us to dream about future. Daydreaming means you dream about the future based on your past experiences. So your past experiences motivate you to think of things which are not in the present, which have happened either in the past or in the present. So broadly speaking, these memories are things which you try to recollect. which are in the form of samskaras, and those thoughts just prop up. They are not right happening before you. You had interacted in a particular way, but that event has gone. But you have the freedom when you are sitting on your chair. You try to recollect some of the old memories. They may be good, they may be bad. That's why they can be klishta, they can be painful. If the memory is a good one, it is not painful. But if the memory is a bad one, somebody has died, something has happened, and again they come and trouble you. The death of that person, or you are missing that person, or somebody has done something bad to you, somebody has criticized you or uh, been angry on you. So you are unable to get rid of that thought. So that thought is known as memory. It is smriti. The person who has scolded you or beaten you or criticized you or done anything to you, that is a thing of the past. That person has done it and he is gone. But the memory still persists. So also the memory can be good. Somebody has done good to you in the past and you try to recall it. You try to cherish. We say we cherish fond memories of the past when we had some wonderful experiences. You want to relive them. You're not possible, but at least the memory is there. So it can be a klishta memory or a aklishta memory, a klishta smriti or a aklishta smriti. So memories can be a very powerful factor in determining our character. So our memories have to be handled very carefully. We have to be selective in allowing certain memories to come and block certain memories. That is the whole of yoga. Yoga is actually trying to remove the klishta vrittis, the painful vrittis. We know memories can be good, but if bad memories come repeatedly and haunt us, the old memories, then there should be a way to counter these old memories or the bad memories. So the aklishta, that is less painful or painless memories, should counter and try to neutralize the effect of the bad memories or klishta memories. So aklishta vrittis or aklishta smriti, which is one of the vritti, should counter the klishta, uh, uh, klishta smriti. So smriti means memory. So now we'll start from the first: pramana, viparyaya, vikalpa, nidra and smriti. These are the 5 vrittis. So what is pramana? What is pramana vritti? Is it klishta or is it aklishta? Now, as Patanjali said, there are 5 types of vrittis. Some are painful and some are not painful. So there are some memories which are not painful. So pramana vritti, let us see what category it is. Pratyaksha anumana agamaha pramanani. There are 3 types of pramanas. When we say we are experiencing a pramana vritti, what we are saying is vrittis can be pramana vritti if they fall into these 3 categories: pratyaksha, anumana, agama. Direct perception. What we see is pramana. When you say that you prove it to me, then if you show somebody something and say, see, this is what is, you see, this is what is known as milk. So you are proving, or you have directly perceiving a thing, so you can't negate it. Then there is anumana. The example that is given in anumana means inference. Pramana means direct perception. There cannot be any contradiction. When you have a pramana vritti, you see the thing as it is. There is no doubt about it. It's a direct perception. But there are certain things which become a pramana through anumana. Anumana means through inference. For example, you see a big smoke on the mountains, a huge smoke. and then you infer from that that there somewhere there is a fire. We do not know where, but somewhere below the smoke is a very big fire. You are not seeing the fire, but you are seeing the smoke. So that is known as anumana. Though it is anumana, it is not pramana. When you see fire, it is pramana. When you see the smoke and infer from that that there is a fire, because there cannot be a smoke without fire. So anumana is as good a pramana as direct perception. Pratyaksha is what you see. There cannot be any doubt about it. So that's why when Narendranath asked Sri Ramakrishna, have you seen God? Do you have a direct perception of God as I see things? If you don't have a direct perception of God, then at least do you have an inference? So we can even infer that so many people have done yoga and they have realized. So we can infer that if we do, we can also reach that state. So pratyaksha and anumana. So pratyaksha and anumana, you will see that they are pramanas. Pratyaksha is anumana. Pratyaksha is direct perception. Anumana is inference. So we have to understand what this pratyaksha is. Whatever we see, whatever we perceive is known as pratyaksha, and whatever we infer. And then third is agama. Agama means competent evidence. Competent evidence here means that the scriptures, the Upanishads, they are known as agama, because this competent evidence is based on the scriptures. Somebody has seen it. It is not anumana. You are not seeing even the smoke. But there are certain books. Suppose you believe science or you believe certain scriptures, and there somebody says when there is a smoke, there is a fire. You neither see smoke nor you see fire, but you believe this person because he is a reliable evidence, and he says this competent evidence is known as agama. They are normally the scriptures. What agama is, Swami Vivekananda has explained it in detail. We'll come to that later. But let us see how direct perceptions, inference, and competent evidence, these are the three types of pramanas. And these pramana vrittis are, we are getting these pramana vrittis. We will also get some other vrittis. We will also discuss what nidra vritti is, what smriti is, what other vrittis are, the different types of uh, vikalpa, viparyaya. What are those? We'll see. But first, we'll discuss what pramana vritti. Swamiji says, when two of our perceptions do not contradict each other, we call it proof. I hear something, and if it contradicts something already perceived, I begin to fight it out and do not believe it. So somebody says this is, somebody tells us that there is this particular thing there, and if it contradicts something which I have already perceived, if somebody comes and say, for example, says, I have seen a white crow, because what it is contradicting something which you have seen. You have always seen black crows, you have never seen a white crow, and you know there cannot be a white crow. But if somebody says something and you hear that and says, I have seen a white crow, you will not believe. You fight it out, you do not believe it. So it's not a pramana vritti. You say you are bluffing, I can't take you at face value. So you don't believe it. That is known as, it's not a pramana vritti. Then there are different kinds of proof according to Swamiji. One is pratyaksha, direct perception. Whatever we see, we feel is proof. If there has been nothing to delude the senses, if the senses are giving us the right information, I see the world. That is sufficient proof that it exists. I don't have, somebody doesn't have to tell me that the world exists. I see the things around me. Second is anumana. You see a sign, and from that sign, you come to the thing signified. That is, as I told you, you see the smoke and you come to the fire. After seeing the smoke, you trace the origin of the smoke, and you will find it signifies that there is fire and the smoke is a result of that fire. Third is aptavakya. Now this is very important. Agama. Agama means Aptavakya, the direct evidence of yogis, of those who have seen the truth. Now, here, when you say Agama, you cannot say that these are things which somebody has seen and I will accept it. You can't accept it. You have to accept only of authentic people who are classified as yogis, whom the world considers as yogis because their ideas or their visions do not contradict those of the scriptures, the rishis. So Swamiji says we are all struggling towards knowledge. But you and I have to struggle very hard and come to know through a long, tedious process of reasoning. We try to understand these things. What is the normal process of knowing certain things? We try to know certain things by reasoning out, by classifying knowledge, by trying to prove the theorems. So that is a very painful process from class 1 to class to PhD. We have been doing all these things. We have to struggle hard. We have to struggle hard and come to knowledge through a long, tedious process of reasoning. You just can't say that I will become a nuclear physicist or a nuclear scientist tomorrow. You have to understand the basics of physics, you have to understand mathematics, you have to understand all the fundamentals of science. So, also, yogi tells us that you have to follow certain processes. If you ask me, do you believe in God? And I say, like Sri Ramakrishna told Naren, I have seen God, I can show him to you. You follow this process. He didn't say that I say I have seen God and that's why you have to believe. He never said that. You have to undergo, we are all struggling towards that knowledge, but we have to undergo a long process. Even Swami Vivekananda had to undergo. He had his own doubts. He said, no, these may be hallucinations. These doubts came because of wrong understanding of the spiritual values or the spiritual truths of the scriptures. So that is why we consider some scriptures or some documents or scriptures which are the result of great sadhana. Some people, yogis who have followed this great process, tedious process of reasoning, they have done the sadhana and they have given us some knowledge which is known as agama or aptavakya. Aptavakya means one who has realized and then is telling us. So when Sri Ramakrishna said, he didn't say it from hearsay. He didn't hear somebody and tell that God can be realized. He says, this is what I have seen and I can show it to you. Before his mind, before this yogi's mind, Swamiji says, the past, the present, and the future are all alike. A sign of complete omniscient knowledge. The knowledge which gives rise to scriptures, the knowledge which gives rise to realization. For him, the past, present, and future are all alike. I mean, he can live. There is a beautiful verse in the Gita where Sri Krishna says, I know my past, I know my future, I know what is going to happen, but you don't know. So the Jiva doesn't know, but one who has become one with the Purusha, one with Satchidanand, one with God, these great yogis or these great saints, they have identified with themselves with the cosmic mind, with Ishvara. For them, the past, the present, and the future are all alike. For us, future is something which is imaginary and we are anxious or we worry about it. So also the past. The past has happened, but still we cannot get rid of it. Our smritis, our memories constantly torture us, remind us of the past, or they cause anxiety and tension and worry regarding the future. But a person who knows the past, who knows his own past, the past of others, he knows the future. Before his mind, the past, present, and future are alike. The yogis claim that when you reach to the state of samadhi, then the past, present, and future all become alike. So Swamiji says for him there is only one book to read. He does not have to go through the tedious process for knowledge that we have to. Because we don't believe, because we don't believe in yoga, we don't follow that process. We have to undergo reasoning, try to find out certain things through reasoning, and when we don't understand, we try to go acquire higher and higher knowledge and try to understand from a different point of view. That is just like when There are certain things we don't understand when we are in the primary school. But as we go to higher and higher classes, our knowledge becomes through a tedious process of going to different standards and different classes. We find that our knowledge repository increases. And the more knowledge we have, the more we know and the more clearer the processes becomes. But it is a very tedious process. Whereas for the yogis, they try to take a shortcut and they try to go and see they don't waste time. They go inward. They just don't want to take the roundabout way. They don't want to follow the tedious process. They go directly. That's why the biographer of Sri Krishna, Swami Shardananji, says what other people did in several centuries, Sri Krishna did in one life, because his mind was focused. His mind was not kshipta, it was not scattered. He had certain ideas in mind. He meditated on these ideas and he got the proof, he got an experience. Whatever he wanted, his focus was so much. The whole entire secret of yoga is to do things which you think, give priority to those things which you think are important, which you think or which you believe or which you feel are worthwhile, which are of a permanent nature, which are not temporary. If you have the wisdom, if our buddhi is awakened, that is why this prayer, Gayatri Mantra, is a prayer where we pray to the Lord to awaken our buddhi so that we take the right decision and progress in the right direction. So the yogis are people who have not wasted their time. Sri Ramakrishna, that's why, discarded formal learning, because he said, will it enable me to realize the truth of God? His God realization was his goal. So he was very clear that anything that prevents me or proves to be an obstacle in the path of God realization, I have to omit that. There is a famous term known as Occam's razor. Occam was a mathematician, or maybe he was a scientist, who believed that whatever is unnecessary, if you remove, then only the kernel or the best things remain. So you have to express certain ideas, not by going round and round and round. If you see Sri Ramakrishna's wonderful messages, if you see the cryptic teachings of the Upanishads, even Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, the sutras are so short, so precise, and so perfect. Swamiji says these yogis don't follow this tedious process of going round and round and round and round and taking centuries to realize these truths. They they try to see things, they try to realize or experience these things in this life itself. And their focus is so much. And the secret of that knowledge is concentration. If you have the ekagra chitta, if you have niruddha, ekagra, as I told you, first you begin with the vikshipta, focused, then ekagra, concentrated, and then niruddha. That is totally, you go into samadhi. So that is the source of knowledge. In samadhi, you actually perceive the reality. So once you decide to have the realization of God, if you want to know what God is, what God experience is, one has to mm, dive deep, headlong into that, and that is how these apta vakyas or agamas are written. That's why he says he has only one book for him to read for such yogis. He does not have to go through the tedious process for knowledge that we have to. His words are proof because he sees knowledge in himself. He has chosen to reverse the trend and not allow the mind to be kshipta, and he focuses and turns the mind inwards, allows the chitta to identify itself with the buddhi, and with that searchlight of buddhi, he focuses his attention within and discovers the truth which is really worthwhile to attain. The truth of Satchidananda, which gives us permanent security, permanent uh, peace, permanent joy, not temporary joy which we get in Prakriti. So these are his words are proof because he sees knowledge in himself. These, for instance, are the authors of the sacred scriptures. Therefore, the scriptures are known as these are the proof. If any such persons are living now, if they are an embodiment of the knowledge in the scriptures, as Swami Shivananji said, if you want to understand the Upanishads, look at Sri Ramakrishna's life, look at the life of his disciples who have tried to imbibe those teachings and manifest themselves in their own lives. So, other philosophers can discuss what this Aptavakya is, what is this Agama and all, and they may even say what is the proof of their words. The proof of their words, as Sri Ramakrishna said, I have seen God and I can show him to you. He didn't see, I have seen. People can even tell lies. But he gave that experience to Naren. He not only had the experience to see Brahman or the supreme reality or the divine mother, but whatever he saw, he says, I see it and I can show it to you also. So that is direct evidence, pratyaksha. The proof is in the direct perception, pramana. Because whatever I see is proof and whatever you see is proof. If it does not contradict any past knowledge. See, that is another thing. I may see certain hallucination. And if it does not contradict past knowledge of these aptavakyas, then there is something wrong. Maybe there is something wrong in your perception. The sense organ which, the senses which give you that perception is perhaps not correct. That is why whatever you see through the senses is incomplete knowledge. So there is knowledge beyond the senses, Swamiji says, and whenever it does not contradict reason and past human experience, that knowledge becomes the proof. So this proof, which is given in the scriptures or in the Aptavakyas of people who have realized, these are the words which one should follow and start with the belief that these words are true and practice them, and slowly one will realize those truths. We can safely trust these people because they were the people who practiced these disciplines. The yogis have practiced this discipline. So Swamiji says it will not contradict past experience. So whatever you see, you can tally. All these things have been noted down, and these books have been over centuries. Uh, they are the repository of all the experiences of all the past people who have tried to become yogis and followed this particular path. It may be yoga, it may be the path of bhakti yoga, it may be Raj Yoga. For all experiences, all the paths, experience is the only proof. So this is what Swamiji says. So this past human experience, it will not contradict any reason. For example, Swamiji says any madman may come to this room and sees that he's seeing angels around him. And he may claim that I am seeing angels, I am seeing this, I am seeing that. Will you believe him? Those would not constitute truth. It would not be a proof. In the first place, it must be true knowledge. Secondly, it must not contradict past knowledge. And thirdly, which is more important, it must depend on the character of the man who gives it out. So the character of the man is very important because you may say and he may say that I am seeing it. How can you contradict me? That is true. But there are other reasons. Have in the people in the past ever seen that people who were of impure mind, of who were had very bad characters, have they got these experiences? No. You take Jesus, you take any saint, Buddha, every one of them had that purity of mind. So if somebody says I don't have, if you see the character of that person and see that that basic purity is not maintained in his life and still he claims that he has that experience, then it is wrong, it is a hallucination. Swamiji says because it does not contradict past experience. Not only does not it contradicts past experience, but it also shows that the people of the past, not a single person who has had genuine spiritual experiences were ever did ever possess any bad character. So the character, it must depend on the character of the person. Swamiji says many times, many of the people in the West, when Swami Vivekananda went there, he said, we don't care what the professor says, we don't care what the professor's character is, as long as he teaches me the truth. Swamiji says, I hear in the West that the character of the man is not of so much importance as what he may say. We must first hear what he says, and then if you feel it is right, you don't have to bother about the character. This may be true in physics, chemistry, and other secular things. A man may be wicked and yet make an astronomical discovery. He says that is possible in the physical plane. He can be immoral, but at the same time, he may have an intellect skill to discover different things. But in religion, in spirituality, it is not possible. Swamiji categorically says, because no impure man will ever have the power to reach the truths of religion. Even Jesus declared, all the scriptures declare, these spiritual truths are not accessible to those who are impure. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Jesus clearly said in the Sermon on the Mount, blessed are the pure in heart. Unless what is pure in heart? Pure in heart means the buddhi is awakened. The buddhi cannot awaken. Higher truths cannot be perceived. Even if somebody claims these truths cannot be perceived if one is impure. It is only purity which enables. But in the secular field, in the gross field, any knowledge we acquire does not insist on purity, because even if a person is impure, he can study, because sense knowledge is something different. Supersensuous knowledge or yogic knowledge or the spiritual truths is a totally different. One has to have a totally different approach in which purity plays a very big role. Therefore, we have first of all to see that a man who declares himself to be an apta is perfectly unselfish and a holy person. That is one very important factor which we tend to uh, disregard, and then we fall into different problems, because the truths which have been declared by these great prophets, one has to ascertain the character of that person, the godliness or the saintliness of that person, and then only we can believe that it is true. So, Apta Vakyas are Vakyas of people who have realized these wonderful spiritual truths by virtue of their character, by virtue of their purity, by virtue of their perfect unselfishness and holy behavior. Secondly, since he has to reach beyond the senses for this knowledge, he cannot be pampering to his senses. A professor who teaches mathematics can be a very sense bound person, because he does not require to go beyond the senses to discover mathematics or physics or teach chemistry. Whereas a person who has to transcend the senses cannot be at the same time abusing his senses and becoming unpure. So, impure person who is abusing his senses cannot go beyond the senses. That is a rule which yoga insists upon. So, purity of mind is necessary to get supersensuous knowledge. It may not be necessary for sense bound knowledge, which is this knowledge of the world. It is within the realm of Prakriti, it is not necessary. But if you want to know the higher spiritual truths, as the Sermon on the Mount says, you can, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. So, thirdly, Swamiji says, and we'll end with this, then we'll have some questions, that whatever he says, whatever these Apta Vakyas, these great prophets say, they don't contradict the past knowledge of humanity. Whether you take Jesus, whether you take Buddha, whether you take Krishna, Rama, and all the Bhagavata and all the scriptures repeat the same thing. Language is different, the country is different, the circumstances are different. But if you see the past knowledge of humanity, the past knowledge of these prophets, they are not contradicted. They are put in different forms. Sri Ramakrishna will tell you the same eternal truth, which Buddha said. Buddha will tell you the same truth which the Upanishad said before him. Only he will express it in the language. He will articulate it in the language that people will understand. The language will be different. The way they express it will be different, but it will not contradict. If so many saints have said that purity is an essential condition for supersensuous knowledge, then no prophet who says that we don't need purity, one can be impure, one can be bad and still get this knowledge, that means it is contradicting past knowledge. So the past knowledge of humanity, of all the yogis, of all the scriptures, should not be contradict. Then it will be known as Aptavakya. So any discovery of truth that does not contradict the past truth of wonderful people, the saints of the past, the great spiritual scientists of the past, but if it fits into that, the method of explanation may be different, but the essence is the same. Then it can be accepted. It's a aptavakya. And fourthly, the truth must have a possibility of verification. This is very important. Even after you know that it has been spoken by a great person of the past and several persons, it has been spoken by Buddha, it has been spoken by Jesus, it has been spoken by Krishna and all these people. But if somebody says they have seen it, you can't verify it in your life. You can't attain to that stage. But Patanjali attained to Samadhi, but that was the last time. Now you have to just believe him. That is not acceptable. Swamiji says that is why he wanted to know from Sri Krishna, have you seen God? And when he said, not only I have seen God, but I can make you see God, then he accepted it. When he got the experience. If a man says, I have seen a vision, and tells him that he has no right to see it. If somebody says, he may be a great person, but if he says, I have seen it, but you will never see it in your life. If he claims that, or if he insists on that, then there is something wrong. Everyone must have the power to see it for himself. That's why what yoga claims is, if you follow the principles, you will have the experience which has been described, the samadhi which has been described in the yoga. So this knowledge is known as Aptavakya, or it is known as Agama. So these are the conditions, and if there are some questions, you can ask.
I have a question, Maharaj. I'm Chirantan here from India. Um,
You can
we
ask it
know.
in the chat.
Okay, okay, of course. Sure.
Yeah, the first question is, could you explain vritti, vyapti and samskara? Vyapti is nothing to do with vritti and samskara. Vritti and samskaras are interconnected. Vyapti means all pervading nature. Vyapaka means the all pervasiveness which is used to express the idea of Brahman. He is Sarva Vyapi. When you say Sarva Vyapi means he is all pervading. There is no place where there is no God. So Vyapti is something different. We will come to that later. But you wanted to know the difference between Vritti and Samskara. Yes. Now, Vritti is, as you saw, we took a lot of time to discuss what these vrittis are, klishta and aklishta. We have just finished the pramana vritti. There are other vrittis, nidra, smriti and all. So these vrittis are waves which occur in the chitta, mind. After these waves occur, what happens to those waves? Do they vanish? That you have to understand these things first. When the waves of the ocean, Swamiji gives a simple example. For example, there are so many waves which continuously come and hit the shores. When it hits the shores, it comes in a particular pattern, big wave, small wave, and they have a tendency to create certain patterns in the sand. Now, our chitta or mind stuff is something where these continuous good waves or bad waves which have come, they form certain patterns. They form certain patterns which are known as samskaras. So, vritti, difference between vritti and samskara is that vrittis cause samskaras, but at the same time, when the vrittis arise in the mind, they are also determined by the samskaras. You may say the vrittis are solidified vrittis. So when there is a external suggestion or external perception, we see certain things. Now, if all our past vrittis, suppose every time we saw a lizard, we had the vritti of fear. Somebody told us in childhood, a child does not fear anything. He just goes and catches the lizard. He doesn't know. Then the mother tells the child, no, that lizard is dangerous, don't go near it. So after that, the child always thinks he has a fear vritti. Whenever he sees the lizard, that fear vritti comes. So when it comes hundreds and thousands of times, every time he sees the lizard, that fear vritti comes. So that child now has developed a vritti which has become a samskara. That samskara is that he has the fear samskara of, you can say he has a tendency. Samskara is nothing but a tendency. So the person has got a tendency to develop fear when he sees a lizard. Another boy has been told by the mother, you don't have to worry about that lizard. It is harmless. It can't do you any harm. You are much stronger than that. So that boy doesn't have a fear vritti. So his samskaras will be fearlessness. Whereas the samskara of that person, boy, young child who was told that a lizard is dangerous, he, whenever, even after a certain age, when the vrittis come, if he has not destroyed these samskaras, the same samskaras will come and he will develop fear. So samskaras are solidified, or you may say vrittis which have become habits or tendencies. That is a good word. These are the tendencies. They are not vrittis, they are tendencies which create vrittis. So samskaras will help us to, samskaras actually give rise to different vrittis. The person who has a different samskara but sees the same thing will have different vrittis. A person who is always afraid of snakes will see a rope and say that it is a snake in the dark. So that samskara is responsible for creating that fear in him. Whereas the other person who is fearless, he might see it as a snake, but he will not run away. So that fear vritti is not there. So that is the difference between samskara and vritti. Now we know uh, cogito ergo sum, coined by French philosopher Rene Descartes. According to him, the first step of attainability of knowledge is because I think, therefore I am. Now it is the other way around. I am, and the mind stuff takes the vritti. Yes. So this is a correct observation. Descartes, when he says, I think, so I am, that is a wrong idea. You have to put it in the reverse way. It is like putting the cart before the horse. The horse always has to be in the front, the cart has to be behind. Whereas this Descartes and the so-called philosophers of the West, some of the philosophers of the West, who believed that because I reason, I exist. Even if you don't reason, will you not exist? You don't reason in deep sleep. That is the argument which our yoga gives. When you are in deep sleep, you are not reasoning, you don't think. If you don't think, then do you not exist? If you are in samadhi, do you not exist? You still exist. So existence is something which cannot be proved by thought, by the manas. It is just like saying that the manomaya kosha is everything. Because I have a manomaya kosha, I exist. No, you can exist without manomaya kosha. You can exist because of vijnanamaya kosha. You can exist because of the anandamaya kosha. Even that is sufficient for you to exist. Sat, Chit and Ananda. Manomaya kosha is just a reflection of the consciousness in the mind, the reactive mind or the ego and all those things. These are secondary things. So it is correct what you said is. Acha, please can you explain how we can overcome our vrittis? So it is not that we have to overcome their vrittis. As I told you today, we have to understand what these vrittis are to overcome or to control it. It is not just overcoming, to control these vrittis and allow them either to come or not to come. We first have to understand its process. If you have a car, you should know how to drive a car to drive it. So we have a chitta which is constantly producing vrittis. It is like we have a gas which as soon as you light the gas, the flame comes. But you should know how to use that flame, how to control that flame. Then you can cook. So also the vrittis are constantly coming and people are confused. Why these vrittis come? They become painful, they become sad, they become morose, and they don't know how these vrittis come, and that's why they can't control it. So your question, the answer to your question is how to control these vrittis. First thing is by listening to these aptavakyas, listening to this or reading this yoga philosophy, which discusses in great deal about these vrittis. We have to first understand. We have just discussed the pramana vritti. There are four other vrittis which we have to discuss. Maybe at the end of that, you will get an idea how to control the vrittis. So, to control the vrittis, first we have to know what these vrittis are, how they impact us, how memories impact us. There are people who say that I can't get rid of bad memories. Something has happened in the past. The memories keep on coming. Now you don't know what the chitta is, what samskaras are, how to reduce the samskaras, how to cancel the samskaras, how to control the vrittis, how to counter these vrittis. So there are many techniques. Today we will not be able to discuss that. But the first step in understanding what these vrittis are is to in controlling the vrittis is to understand what these vrittis are. So we are trying in the next few classes. I think we will finish our discussion on the vrittis, and then we will be able to uh, understand how to control it. Even Patanjali gives us hints how to make the klishta vrittis, painful vrittis, painless. How to make it, how to counter it. Pratipaksha bhavana. There are so many sutras which will explain to us. We have not yet reached that. When we come to that, we will discuss. Next. Yes. Now Tushar is asking a question that if a person A has a vritti, then would it be the same for B? How can it be? As I told you, vrittis change. They cannot be the same because a person A, even if they are sitting together, even if two persons, person A and person B are, I told you very clearly that in the dark they are seeing a rope. Person A has a vritti of the rope, person B has a vritti of a snake. He starts shouting. He starts reacting in a different way. His vritti is different. How can the vritti be same? Vrittis can never be the same. They will all depend on what samskaras you have. What is your chitta made of? If your chitta is made of good samskaras, you will have good vrittis. If you chitta is the same object, two people may say, one may get a good desire, another may get an evil desire. So it depends, the vritti cannot be the same. Now, can
Thank
we
you, Maharaj.
bring memories from past life that is bad or good which influences in the present? Yes, yogis can do it. Yogis claim that once you are able to control the vrittis, which is a far cry now, we have to first understand we are not in control of our vrittis. But if you are able to control our vrittis, the past, present, and future, we'll come to that sutra also, become very clear to us. Then we know what we had done in the past. Yogis can see that, what they had done in the past. Even Holy Mother, if you see, she would say that you had done this. They can see the past. That's why they guide you properly. They know what is the way forward for this person, for their disciples. So to see the past, present, and based on that, see the future also is possible, but not possible for all. Because right now we are so much uh, material or so much involved in Prakriti that we, unless we touch the Purusha, unless we have some kind of basic realization, mm, we cannot have this uh, distinction. I mean, between past, we cannot see what we were in the past. What are the vrittis of the past we had? But we can get a hint that if we are constantly getting some bad vrittis, then we have to know that there were so many times we have thought of this in the past. Otherwise, why will it come? Holy Mother used to say, don't see others' faults. If you are constantly seeing faults of others, in spite of people telling you not to do it, that means in the past you had been seeing these faults. So we can get a ritti, and it may not be in this life, it may be in the past life. In the past life, if you have done some very good things, you will see some people getting those vrittis which are good without effort. So they are born, we think it is just a coincidence, but it is not a coincidence. It is because of the accumulated samskaras of the past life. So I'll take your leave now. Om Shanti
शांति
Shanti
शांति
Shanti Hari
प्रणाम महाराज
Om Tat Sat.
ठीक है
Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
हरिओम।
Namaste, Mahar.